What do you need to know after owning a Harley Davidson Sportster for 5 years? Stay tuned, we're going to find out. Alright everybody, what is up? What is up? As always, thanks for stopping by to another video today. We are out on the streets of Philadelphia with our Harley Sportster Iron 1200 here again. And today, we are talking about how I have owned this motorcycle for 5 years. I was actually just thinking about to the day, to this week, has been about the 5-year anniversary of me getting and owning this Harley Davidson Sportster Iron 1200. And as always, I get tons and tons and tons of questions about all the different experiences and that you can do with the bike, what's happened to the bike, what could go wrong with the bike, what's it like, all the different stuff and questions that you guys love to ask me down in the comments about this bike. And a lot of them tend to be about kind of like the reliability of the bike over time and just the general experience of having the bike over this period of time. So that's what I want to do for you guys today, is address some of those questions that typically pop up about long-term ownership of the Harley Davidson Sportster. I want to kind of tackle it in somewhat of two ways here. So really kind of like the dependability and reliability of the machine itself over the period of time, and a little bit about kind of my experience through the years with the bike as well. Just kind of like what I've done with it, what I've experienced learning and growing and riding on this bike, a little bit of that over time. And then finally, I'm going to tell you why I've kept it for such a long time, 5 years, and then why also I plan to keep this bike for another 5, 10, 15, 20 years. As long as I can keep this thing running, I will always have this bike in my possession. But of course, before we get started, let me know some of your guys' thoughts and opinions on long-term ownership of a Harley Sportster or any of your bikes in general, because like I said, 5 years from what I have seen tends to be kind of a long period of time to own a Sportster. A lot of people trade them in over time. They trade them up for a new bike, whatever the reason, get rid of it. It's not fitting their needs. Let me know if you think 5 years is a long time to own a Sportster. What are some things to consider when owning a Sportster for this long period of time and even longer into the future? So first off, like I said, I want to talk a little bit about the reliability and dependability of this bike. Again, the Sportster, the Evo 1200 engine is a tried and true, tested, really great, reliable, dependable engine. The frame and all that stuff has been around forever. I really personally have not had too many issues with almost anything going wrong with the bike. Now, there are a couple that I will talk about here to let you know of, and really those weren't even super big deals. Again, guys, so this is outside of normal just wear and tear, you know, upkeep of maintenance, replacing tires. I'm not considering that stuff anything going wrong. The only things that really ever broke or went wrong with this bike, you guys may remember a couple videos that I made previously. The chain guard, the metal chain guard that was here that was attached to the swing arm, did snap and break off. So that was one of the things that I was planning on taking off anyway. I didn't really care, but it was a little disheartening that, you know, like this big metal chunk of a guard just broke right off. But I wasn't too mad because, like I said, I was going to take it off anyways. But that is one thing that did break pretty early on, probably within, I would say, the first year or first couple thousand miles of owning the bike. That thing snapped right off. I took it off. I actually like the look without it anyways. Next up, the only other thing that ever really went wrong with this bike so far in my 5 years of ownership was the clutch plate springs did go bad. That was after about 2.5 years and probably 12,000 miles. Also was a little disheartening because that wasn't something that I would expect to go so soon. I do attribute that to possibly living in the city, all the stop and go, clutch, holding it in, letting it out, all that stuff. Just overuse of wear over time maybe made that go a little bit earlier than it should have. But I did have the clutch plates replaced at about 12,000 miles. Haven't really had any issue with those since. So outside of normal maintenance, wear and tear, those are really kind of the only two things that have gone wrong in about 5 years of having the bike. Now, I did forget to mention, I've got almost 19,000 miles on the bike so far. So that's 5 years, 19,000 miles. Really, I would say that's a pretty good track record if that's the only two things that have ever really gone wrong with the bike. Normal maintenance, upkeep, and stuff like that has been great. But some of you guys tuning in out there that have your Sportsters for a while, let me know anything that has gone wrong with these things, anything that broke or you needed to change or you needed to replace. just anything that went wrong, feel free to drop it down in the comments. I'd be curious to see if anybody has had maybe like a worse experience than I had, because I would say overall reliability, dependability, functionality of the bike has been pretty much perfect throughout about 5 years and 19,000 miles for me on this bike. So of course now we're going to hop on, fire it up, and take it for a spin throughout Philadelphia, talk a little bit about stuff that I've done progressively over the first 5 years of ownership with the bike. Alrighty guys, so we are on the bike now. So like I said, just want to talk a little bit about my progression of owning the Sportster for 5 years now. So like I said, just about to this day or to this week, I forget exactly, but right on exactly 5 years of ownership. So what did that look like? Really, when I got this bike in 2019, I was really starting my second year of riding. So I had really spent my first year on a 750, and then in my second year I felt, you know, good enough, confident enough, I was ready to move up into something a little more powerful. Felt like the Iron 1200 was the right decision and the right move to make. Just loved the idea of the iconic Sportster, loved the look, and felt like the power was really going to be kind of enough and manageable to have fun for a couple years. So that first year was really just kind of like, you know, getting acclimated to the bike. Like I said, you know, it was around August that I got it. Had probably August, September, October, rode a little bit into November. I believe I put a little over 2,000 miles on it at that point in time. Really got good and comfortable on it within that first year, and a couple thousand miles of it. And then of course had to put it away for winter because of course Pennsylvania winters are unpredictable and crazy. So then we got it out in year 2, and that's when I really started to just kind of like really go all in on the bike. Really started to do modifications, really started to take it on longer trips. And then year 2 of course ended up being 2020, which was, as everybody knows, COVID, pandemic, blah blah blah, all that, shutdowns. I had so much time on my hands, and I spent so much time with this bike in year 2 of owning it. And I mean, it was awesome. Like, just modifications, longer road trips, you know, day trips, weekenders, stay out 2-3 nights at a time. And the bike really just did amazing with all of that. I think in year 2, when I really got into a lot of that stuff, I was taking it across the state, did some up into New York, Jersey, Maryland, all that kind of like local tri-state area traveling type stuff for me. So it was awesome. I think I put almost 6,000 to 7,000 miles on it in year 2, so I was pretty excited and happy about that. Going into year 3, then of course a lot of the same, you know, continuing a lot of the modifications, a lot of the upgrades I'd saved up money for, just to really try to kind of make the bike my own. And again, the experience on the Sportster, I was doing everything with it in year 3. I'm running around town, you know, city, urban stuff. I'm going out on back roads, highways, doing literally anything I wanted to with this bike, even stuff that people were saying that it was maybe not the best for, like long distance traveling and highway. And then as that 3-year mark hit, 3.5-year period started to hit, you know, your mind starts to kind of wander a little bit. I had been doing some test rides of other bikes, you know, lowrider S's, street bobs, some stuff on the Milwaukee 8 platform, and you kind of start to get that itch to kind of, you know, kind of advance your skills, advance your bike a little bit, get a little bit more power, get bigger, get out there doing longer distance, going faster and stuff like that. That's when my mind started to kind of wander a little bit. You know, work's going good, I got a bunch of money saved up. I'm like, oh, you know, I could start kind of looking at a new bike here, and I love the Softail Street Bob. So it was kind of around that 3.5-year period where I'm starting to consider, do I trade in the Sportster on a new one? Do I just outright, you know, buy another new one? So then I've got 2. And that's when, you guys know, at that point, that's when I ended up making the decision to get the 2022 Softail Street Bob that I have, that you guys have seen a lot of content on that. And then that's when kind of experience with the Sportster changed a little bit, and I don't mean that for good or bad, just different basically. So towards the end of year 3, that's when I got the Street Bob, and then of course a lot of riding, you know, progresses into that bike. You know, I want to ride that, get comfortable with it, get familiar with it, do modifications on it, show it off. I'm taking that bike out everywhere. Not gonna lie, the Sportster did fall to kind of the backside a little bit, but at that point I really did want to keep the Sportster. It was paid off, it's low maintenance, it was not much, you know, hassle. It's a great bike. I was like, I'm gonna keep it. I want to have 2 bikes. And at that point, about year 4, that's when my mindset started to shift with a little bit. That's when the Sportster started to kind of become like my around town bar hopper, errands, not going out that long a distance type of bike, because I would use the street bob for that stuff. So around year 4, I had about, you know, 17,000 miles on the thing at that point. And that's when I kind of made the decision. I'm like, let's, you know, have some fun with this thing. Not really a project bike, but maybe just turn it into something I can like tinker with. So that's when I started to get that idea. You know, we're gonna strip it down, put some different parts on it, turn it into a little bit of a bobber style bike. And a little bit started to happen towards the end of year 4. Done a little bit more of that this year at the beginning of year 5 of having this thing, and that's where it kind of is in its current state so far. And so where we are with the bike currently, like I said, at this point we've got almost about 19,000 miles on the bike. I'm planning on keeping it pretty much forever. I mean, I don't really see much of a reason to ever get rid of this thing, because it has been such a fun, reliable, dependable machine. Like, I just don't see any reason to get rid of it after 5 years. I'll keep it another 5, 10, 15, as long as I can run this thing into the ground. Now, like I said, it is getting less miles on it and less usage now, just because the street bob tends to be like a little bit more of my choice. But after 5 years, like, just nothing but good things to say about this Harley Sportster Iron 1200. Now, is it going to have some limitations? Yes, limitations of, you know, power, limitations of comfort, you know, a little bit of limitations of storage. But I mean, to me, that's part of some of the fun part about riding this bike, is making it work despite some of those so-called limitations. And then that leads me back to a little bit of like what I said at the beginning. You know, why don't people typically keep their Sportsters this long? Is maybe some of those limitations, you're ready to upgrade or something like that. But I mean, the Sportster 2 gets a little bit of that negative connotation. You get into the Harley culture, you want to go out to like the events and this and that. You don't see a lot of the Sportsters sometimes. You know, you get some of that like negative connotation of like, oh, it's a beginner bike, or I hate to even say it, but female bike, blah blah blah, all that stuff. Like, guys, I'm telling you, you can take this bike anywhere, and in my opinion, it's one of the coolest bikes around. You shouldn't have to deal with any of that like nonsense about the perception of the bike. So that's a little bit of my experience with the Harley Sportster after 5 years, and again, put almost like 19,000 miles on it so far at this point. Really just kind of those 3 factors there, is keeping it for 5 years, the reliability, the dependability. My experience with it has been great, and again, I intend to keep it for many, many years after that. So like I said, guys, let me know down in the comments what your long-term experience has been like with the Harley Sportster. Did you trade in a Sportster for any reason? Do you plan on keeping a Sportster long-term? Is a Sportster just another part of the stable of your bikes that you like to just have? Drop it down there in the comments and let me know. And of course, if you have any questions on my experience with this bike after this period of time, feel free to drop them down there. Let me know. I'll be sure to follow up. But I do think that is going to start to wrap this one up for now. As always, guys, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for tuning in. As always, make sure you ride safe out there. Make it a good one, guys. It's the Moto Jawn. We'll see you all on down the road. Peace.